Part 10. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 91. Chapter 91. Another upgrade? Gretel returned to the Mage Tower with the newly acquired oak staff. As soon as he entered the door, he forgot about the Roman knights. He has treated many patients in his previous life. Some were cured, some were not cured, and some died on the spot after resuscitation failed. If everyone is worried about it, will the doctor do anything? Returning to the Mage Tower, he climbed up to the second floor familiarly and returned to his room. The door was empty as soon as I walked in. Clothes, bedding, pens, and papers, half of the books I read last night, everything was gone. Greet stood there stunned for 2 seconds. What's going on? Kicked me out? My surgical instruments. My alchemy equipment. I have written the medical record. I copied the book. You have to pay these back to me. Your Majesty the Master. An enthusiastic call came from behind. Greet turned his head and saw the servant who had brought him berries yesterday, running up to him and bending at a 45-degree angle. Your room has been moved to the 3rd floor. Come, and take a look. If there is anything you don't like about the furnishings, we will help you clean it up right away. 3rd floor, Gretel was surprised. The 3rd floor is the official mage's territory. He originally estimated that it would take at least 1 or 2 months to move up there. I'm a mage apprentice. Oh, you are already an official pastor, the servant bowed even lower. Master Elliot proposed it, and Lord Gearman agreed, so you can move up there without worry. He maintained a 60-degree bent posture and turned outwards at a right angle with his heels as the axis. The movements were so smooth and the rotations were so smooth that Greet had to sigh that there were talents among the servants. He was the number one in the 360 professions. In this case, let's go to the 3rd floor. The 3rd floor is rarely lively. Masters Elliot and Karen were both there, gesticulating and telling the servants to move it. The 2 servants were thrown around in circles under their instructions, with sweat dripping down like raindrops. Master Karen still felt disgusted. Be careful, don't make the floor dirty. Wipe it, your hands are sweaty, and don't touch the manuscript paper. Hey, Gretel, are you here? Gretel smiled and greeted them. He walked in to see his new home, which had 1 bedroom and a living room, and the area was twice as large as the one downstairs. What's even better is that there is a bathroom in the suite, unlike the public bathroom on the 2nd floor. He has to go outside the room to wash his face, brush his teeth, take a shower and go to the toilet. It makes him dream of returning to the student dormitory. According to previous calculations, such a 1-bedroom apartment would have a starting floor area of at least 50 square meters. Thank you for your trouble. Greet thanked him sincerely. He invited the 2 mages to sit down in the living room, and a servant immediately brought drinks and set out 2 plates of snacks. Master Elliot laughed and waved his hands. Hey, what's the big deal? You are already a 1st-level priest, which is equivalent to a 1st-level mage. Besides, with your qualifications, breakthrough is not a matter of time. Then let me borrow your good words. Gretel smiled. I also hope that I can break through in a month or 2. I'm afraid I'll get stuck again. On the sofa opposite, Erod and Karen jumped up at the same time, speaking nervously. What's the matter? I seem to have a breakthrough. With a crash, the 2 mages stood up at the same time. Erod was busy driving away the servants, while Karen ran up, shouting as he ran. Teacher! Your Majesty the Archmage! Gretel said he is about to break through again. Footsteps, shouts, doors slamming. Greet ignored all of this and leaned back on the sofa, assuming his most comfortable meditation posture. The surroundings became quiet. When he meditated for the first time, the self that Greet had outlined with his mental power resurfaced, shining brightly in the darkness. 2 months later, Greed observed himself in meditation again, and saw numerous unsatisfactory aspects at a glance. Not a single bone is missing, but the shape of the joint socket is left to fate, without any detailed sculpture. Muscles are pieces, not bundles of fibers. The blood vessels only outline the main large blood vessels. The small branches and even capillaries are blurred in the meditation environment. It turns out that I have to take the initiative to shape these, instead of just knowing them. This is a big project. Greed patiently used his mental power to make pens, knives, and hands that knead the clay, shaping it carefully from top to bottom. The beginning is the skeletal part: skull, cervical vertebrae, thoracic vertebrae. As soon as I reached the third thoracic vertebrae, I felt like my brain was buzzing and it was getting harder and harder to concentrate. Is this, mentally exhausted? Does a mage apprentice only have that little spiritual power? Gretel bit the tip of his tongue and tried to cheer himself up. Suddenly, a warm current surged out of his limbs, swirled, gathered, and surged up from the back of his neck. Gretel suddenly became energetic. In the meditation scene, the last stroke of the third thoracic vertebra drew an arc, ending steadily. Done. Relying on this heat flow, Greed completed the outline of the entire spine in one go. Opening his eyes again, he casually released a freezing ray. The frosty ray fell directly into the water glass, rattling continuously. The glass of water was completely frozen from top to bottom on the spot. The power of the spell is obviously higher than that of the past few days. Upgraded. Gretel pumped his fist hard and let out a hearty cheer. With a bang, the door was pushed open with great force, and a group of people rushed in. The leader was the old magician, who asked right away, "Little Gretel, have you made a breakthrough? Are you a mage or a priest? Quick, meditate and let me see." Gretel meditated hard as he said. The old magician also sank into a meditative environment, sensing changes in the elements around him. "It's strange, your mental power and affinity with magic seem to be a little higher. Although only a little bit." His thumb and index finger were slightly apart, revealing a 2 mm wide gap, indicating just a little bit. But things like affinity seldom change. The records I've seen before are all about encountering big opportunities, eating some treasures, or having a breakthrough between life and death. Your affinity, it will improve, but why? The old magician put his hands behind his back, turned his head, and wandered around Gretel. His grey beard was fluttering, his brows were furrowed, and he looked at Gretel as if he was about to cut him open. Why? Why? Why on earth? If you ask me, I don't know either. It's been less than 2 months since I traveled through time. I don't understand the rules of this world at all, and I've only read the most basic knowledge of magic. Gretel wanted to roll his eyes. The old magician turned to the third circle and grabbed his shoulder suddenly. By the way, when did you start feeling like you were about to upgrade? Why do you suddenly feel this way? The teacher took me to plant an oak staff this morning, but yesterday, when I took out the iron stone, I felt a little bit. Gretel was shaken back and forth by him, and every sentence he said could be broken into 3 sentences. The old magician let go of him and sighed. That's right, create new magic items, establish new theories. Magicians who can do these will usually upgrade faster than others. The senior masters have always had there is a conjecture that the magicians who make these innovations will be loved by the world. It will be recommended tomorrow. The editor said that I still have the possibility of another PK, so please read the article every day and don't keep reading. It's very important to keep reading. Please collect, recommend, book reviews, please ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 92. Beloved by the will of the world? Gretel's heart skipped a beat. If there really is such a thing as the will of the world, Stowaways like him are probably the most hated objects of the will of the world. The reputation value will be negative from the beginning, right? Therefore, his upgrade route is different from others. He probably saved one person first, and the will of the world gave him a tourist visa for the sake of saving people, then he saved 3 or 5 people, and the tourist visa was converted into a green card. He developed new treatments, naturalization allowed. The so-called affinity between spiritual power and elements is high. Does it mean that the will of the world is pleased with him and has given him a little higher authority? Etc. Now is not the time to draw conclusions. Greet tried not to let his thoughts wander. There are too few samples, at least we need to upgrade it twice more to see. To upgrade, you must first learn. After seeing off the old magician who returned to the parliament, Greet plunged into the sea of books without hesitation. After being promoted to a first-level mage and a first-level priest, he immediately had a long list of books to read and things to learn. Unfortunately, upgrading quickly has its disadvantages. He hasn't finished memorizing the history of magic, continental geography, illustrated books of magical animals and plants, alchemy, potions, etc. that the mage apprentice has to memorize. Dual careers mean double the effort. Gretel was in the dark sky in the mage's tower house. He only knew the sun was rising and the moon was setting, but he didn't know how time was passing. The old magician also devoted himself to his grandson Savior. In more than a month, an envoy from the Magic Council was sent over. Gretel Nordmark, the person who came, was a man in his 20s. He was depressed, his face was sallow, and his black hair hung on his forehead like a curtain. He didn't wash it for an unknown amount of time. The embroidery patterns of 3 wands on the hem of the robe are arranged diagonally. It is obvious that he is a third-level mage. He took a document from the knight behind him and handed it to Gretel. The council will recently launch a project to bring together young and potential low-level mages for special training. Master Lawrence recommended you. Last month, you submitted your thesis and were selected for this project. Is it overdue? Gretel was a little excited. He waved his fist vigorously and showed a big smile. The draft is over. Posted an article. In the past, it was extremely difficult to publish a paper, especially those with an impact factor of 5 or more. It often required 1 or 2 years of research, preparation, and writing, and often required 1, 2, and 3 revisions. Sure enough, it is easier to publish a paper if you stand on the shoulders of giants. This heartfelt joy also infected those who came. His sallow face twitched, and he gave a stiff smile. Get ready. Follow me to the Magic Council in 2 days. Okay. In order to welcome the envoys of the Magic Council and to send Gretel off, a small banquet was held in the Mage Tower. At the banquet, Gretel heard a piece of news that could not be said to be good or bad. The Roman knight is dead. Dead, Greet was stunned. How did you die? It is said to be a suicide. Master Karen used this gossip as a meal and said it eloquently at the dinner table. He died so tragically that all the blood in his body was drained. I heard from my servant that he committed suicide in the secret room of the temple. He drew a reverse pentagram of the boss with his blood and lay on top of it. Do you died? Gretel stared at his plate blankly. On the plate, there was fragrant roast chicken, runny omelette, fried cod that was golden on the outside and white on the inside, and sweet and tangy blueberry jam. All the same, they were all things that were readily available in the previous life but could not be afforded when I first crossed over. 2 months ago, he was still a new recruit in the city guard. The Roman knights wanted to recruit him to participate in the search operation, but he could not resist. The Roman knight hit the gargoyle in his direction, and he managed to escape, but he had no right to retaliate. The Roman knight asked the temple to send people to catch him, and he escaped with the protection of the big guys. But now, he could have nothing to do with it and listen to the life and death of the Roman knight as gossip. Suicide. Why? Master Elliot asked vaguely while chewing a piece of bread. Greet shrugged. The right hand is disabled. He asked me to cure it, but I couldn't cure it. Is this the guy who wants to harm you? Master Elliot suddenly reacted. Without waiting for Greet to answer, he put down the knife in his right hand and gave a thumbs up. Well done. You should. You should not treat him. Gretel smiled bitterly. He reluctantly defended, I really can't cure it. Elliot waved his hand impatiently, as if I know, I believe whatever you say, and then asked Karen. What about the temple? Will it cause trouble for Gretel? No way. The temple is crazy, Karen made a contemptuous gesture. He laughed happily, his blonde hair swaying. The temple has gone crazy. The high priest led a group of people to pray every day to ward off evil spirits, and they almost demolished the secret room. I heard that when that guy was discovered, his internal organs turned into black water, and the ground was covered with water. Pierced by corrosion. Black water. Corrosion. Penetrating into the ground? Greet was startled. He grabbed Karen anxiously and asked, Is there anything going on with the water source? How is that possible? Karen waved his hand nonchalantly. Seeing that Gretel still frowned, he sneered and patted Gretel on the arm. What do you have to worry about? What the spring water temple does is purifying water sources. They are the best at it. It's none of our business anyway. Do you know where the water in the Mage Tower comes from? It's directly connected to the water elemental world. What? Gretel was stunned. Water elemental realm? So high-end stuff? Are there mage towers directly connected? You don't know this, Master. Karen was also dumbfounded. That's right. You have just upgraded and it's not time to start learning about the mage tower yet, but you are working too hard these days, aren't you? You don't want to ask for any information. Gretel smiled. In the past few days, he has read half a man's book, learned 5 magics and 3 divine arts, completed 2 experiments, and has another one in progress. While eating, he held a fork in his mouth and was still thinking about magic models in his mind. Let alone asking for information, he didn't even know what was in his mouth. Oh, don't care about this anymore. That guy has been dead for more than 10 days. Something happened when something should have happened. If nothing happens, then it's okay. But Greet's brows did not relax. It takes time for an epidemic to spread, brother. Even for a severe infectious disease like the plague, it takes time for it to spread from a small amount to an explosive spread. He finished the meal thoughtfully. As soon as he stepped out of the restaurant, the servants waiting outside hurriedly greeted him and bowed deeply. Mage Nordmark. A man named Raymond is looking for you, saying he is your neighbor and there is something urgent. Brother Raymond. What's the emergency? Did the Roman knight die and his family turn their anger on Uncle Karen's family? Greet was startled and hurried downstairs. Raymond was pacing back and forth at the entrance of the Mage Tower, his brows furrowed and anxious. Seeing Gretel appear, he rushed up and grabbed Gretel, squeezing Gretel's shoulders until they hurt. Little Greet. Save Aunt. Aunt is ill, very ill, and there is no priest to be found. Next comes another big plot. Rub hands together excitedly. There will be another recommendation this afternoon. I hope there will be a chance of successful PK this time. Everyone, please remember to read it every day. Don't keep reading. It is very important to keep reading. Please collect, recommend, book reviews, please ask for all kinds of. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 93. And is sick? Greet was startled. The relationship between the city guards and the temple of the god of war has always been close. If Aunt Eileen falls ill, Uncle Karen can use his connections to find a priest to take a look. At least little John will definitely come. So, what happened? Why can't we even hire a pastor? I'll go take a look with you, Gretel said decisively. He ran in, picked up his surgical instruments and alchemy equipment, and quickly walked out of the mage tower. While riding the horse, he asked questions, and in the roaring wind, he listened intermittently to what Brother Raymond said. Aunt Eileen fell ill the day before yesterday. I had diarrhea several times the day before yesterday. At that time, I just thought it was because I had eaten bad food and didn't pay much attention to it. However, yesterday I suddenly developed a high fever. From last night to this morning, I had diarrhea more than 10 times. My stomach hurt so badly that I couldn't even stand up in the end. Uncle Karen saw that something was wrong, so early in the morning, he went to the temple of the god of war to ask for a priest. Won't the priest come? Gretel asked urgently. Brother Raymond leaned on the horse and shook his head vigorously, with a bitter look on his face. The priests have all been invited away, even apprentices like little John have been invited away. There are people at the door of the temple, sitting, lying down, and people who start to have diarrhea when they lie down. Little Greet, you didn't see it? All people. Do you start having diarrhea while lying down? A flash of lightning flashed in Greet's mind. Brother Raymond's description made him think of one word reflexively. Medical rush. There are too many patients in a short period of time, and the strength of medical institutions is completely insufficient to cope with it, and if the symptoms of these patients are the same or similar. The city gate is close at hand. Gretel reined in his horse and slowed down. 2 city guards were on duty at the door. When they saw Raymond coming back with him, they shouted hello. Little Greet, you are back. Go home quickly, your Aunt Eileen is sick. Little Greet, can you come to my house and see me later? My daughter is also sick. Sick too? Are there so many patients? Greet was distracted, nodded randomly, and passed quickly. There is much less black mud and sewage on the main street than last time. It is obvious that the city cleanup plan promoted by Greet has achieved initial results. However, not long after, when I turned onto the path, the stench immediately hit my face. It's too late. The plan to remove garbage and feces and clean the streets was started too late. Gretel tried to speed up. Arriving at the door of Uncle Karen's house, they both got off their horses. Raymond rushed in and shouted. Aunt, are you okay? I'm okay. A weak voice came from the bedroom. Gretel followed the sound and saw Aunt Eileen holding her belly with difficulty and clearing the basin on the floor. When she saw him coming in, she immediately waved. Get out, get out. Dirty. Aunt Eileen, Greet rushed forward. The woman's pale face immediately turned red, and she half turned around, desperately trying to hide the smelly basin in her hand. Greet rushed to hold her down. Auntie, let me take a look. It's okay, I'm a healer. The basin was black and yellow, half liquid and half solid, all filled with the filth from recent diarrhea. Aunt Eileen was so embarrassed that she didn't know what to do. However, she was unable to grab a big boy after being ill, so she could only let Greet carry the basin to the light at the door and observe it carefully. Gretel sighed in relief. There was a lot of solid matter in the basin, and the color was darker. It was not the rice swill-like form he was most afraid of, it was not cholera. Thank God, at least it wasn't cholera. He found a small wooden stick, stirred it in the basin, and picked it up to take a closer look. There is mucus, pus, and blood, smelly but not fishy. It is a typical stool with mucus, pus, and blood. God, why would he want to see this in person? In his previous life, these jobs would have been done by people from the laboratory department. Complaints are complaints. Combined with the previous symptoms of diarrhea, fever, and other symptoms, Greet had already made preliminary considerations in his mind. Putting down the basin, he washed his hands and continued with the consultation and physical examination. Fever, abdominal pain, tenesmus, hyperactive bowel sounds, and obvious tenderness in the left lower abdomen. Consider bacillary dysentery. In the absence of routine blood tests, routine stool tests, no bacterial culture, no colonoscopy, and nothing else, we can only consider bacillary dysentery. Greet silently added emphasis to the word consider. In the case of bacillary dysentery, the treatment plan is very clear, and some of them are something he can do now. Gretel didn't even need to think hard, he turned around and said, "Brother Raymond." "How to say?" Raymond squatted beside him nervously, watching Gretel's every move. When he heard Gretel calling him, he immediately jumped up. "What do you want me to do? Is there boiling water at home?" "No." "Then go and boil it. When it boils, pour a bowl over. Remember, wash your hands first, and then rinse the bowl with boiling water. Give me salt. Take some sugar too. Come here at 1 o'clock. Raymond was busy doing it. Gray calmed down and sat next to Aunt Eileen, his eyes slightly closed. The pathological changes of bacillary dysentery mainly occur in the large intestine, mainly the sigmoid colon and rectum. Therefore, the focus of treatment should also be the intestines. Health depends on life, life depends on it. In the palm of his right hand, a warm white light dimly lit up, and he pressed it towards the patient's left lower abdomen. Kill germs, reduce intestinal secretion, speed up metabolism, and decompose toxins entering the blood as quickly as possible. Greet thought silently, trying to describe the position and structure of the intestines in his mind, and imagine how the healing energy would pass through. The white light in the palm of the hand became brighter and brighter, and it took a long time to dim. Aunt Eileen stood up in surprise and pressed her abdomen. "Little Greet, I'm fine. My stomach doesn't hurt anymore." "Auntie, lie down." Gretel pushed her down, turned around, took the water bowl from Raymond's hand, and fed her sugar and salt water. After waiting for another half an hour, and after confirming that Aunt Eileen no longer had abdominal pain or diarrhea, Greet breathed a sigh of relief and stood up. "Raymond, watch out for Auntie, I'm going out." "Where did you go?" "Go and see how many people are sick in the city." Gretel said a word, swept out of the room like the wind, saddled his horse. He first ran to the temple of the god of war. The 3 steps at the entrance of the temple were densely packed with patients. Then he rode his horse to the temple of the goddess of spring. The door of the temple was closed tightly, and not even the temple guard guarding the door could be seen. Hundreds of people were sitting or lying in the small square, with filth flowing everywhere and the stench filling the sky. Greet's heart became sinking. Heartland City has a population of only 20,000. Just over 200 people gathered at the entrance of the temple to seek medical treatment. So, what about those who have been healed by priests? What about those who don't have the energy to come? You haven't gotten sick yet, or your condition isn't serious, and you don't think you need to come? An incidence rate of 1% is already very scary. The medical system alone cannot sustain it. It needs to be reported, an emergency plan needs to be activated, and administrative power needs to step in. Fortunately, it's not far from the city lord's mansion. Gretel rushed to the door of the city lord's palace, got off his horse, and grabbed a guard. "Where is the city lord?" Going out of the city guard had helped him during the midsummer festival incident and was deeply impressed by him. He answered quickly. 3 days ago, more and more people were sick in the city, and the city lord went to the manor. "Well?" Gretel thanked him, stamped his feet, turned around and left. He went straight to the slums, walked through the familiar streets and alleys, and found Elder Irwin. "Teacher, this won't work. The Great Plague is coming. Treating them one by one like this won't save everyone." Elder Irwin stopped casting spells. The old man's long snow-white hair and beard were covered with sweat drop by drop. He looked at Gretel. "What do you propose? Please ask the teacher to summon all the leading figures in the city and re-establish order." Then Greet looked out the door. Looking at the endless line of people winding out of the door, looking at pairs of eager eyes. "Let's stop this plague." What happened this time was a plague. Did anyone guess it in the last chapter? After struggling for a long time, I finally decided to go with category B. Category A is too fierce. Please collect, recommend, book reviews, please ask for all kinds of. Please come and see it every day. Help me to increase my pursuit and try my best to PK one last time. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 94. Dozens of pairs of eyes stared at Gretel. The father, who was carrying his daughter on his back, had a thin body and a stooped back. He tried hard to spread his shoulders, which were not broad, in order to make his little daughter lie down more comfortably. The mother holding her son had chapped lips and sunken eye sockets. She was curled up and leaning against the wall, still gently stroking the baby in her arms. The daughter supported her mother and tried her best to hold her mother's shoulders with her young shoulders to prevent the woman from falling to the ground. Each patient and each patient's family member. Infancy, youth, maturity, gray hair. This room is the residence of Elder Irwin in the city, and is also where the Order of the God of Nature often gathers. At this moment, at least 5 people in the cult are busy. But the priest's daily treatment skills are limited after all. No matter how busy he is, no matter how hard he works, he can't cope with the endless number of patients. In fact, because Elder Irwin stopped the treatment and spoke to Gretel, the commotion in the crowd grew from near to far, from small to large, and suddenly surged like a wave. "Elder, help me. Please, save my mother. My son is dying, please look at him, look at him." The crowd surged forward. One after another, eager hands, thin, shriveled, and tattered, stretched out unsteadily, almost grabbing Gretel's face. Elder Irwin subconsciously grabbed Gretel and pulled him behind him. "Little Gretel, no, you can't leave them like this." "But it's even more impossible not to leave," Greet dragged him hard. "Teacher, for such a big plague, the whole city must be mobilized together. The city lord has run away, and we must rely on ourselves. It's not possible to rely on healers alone, it's not possible to rely on us alone." His eyes were on fire, his arms were shaking, and his breathing was ragged. He had seen this situation before, and he had just faced it directly before traveling through his previous life. The patient's family members pushed and fought desperately to get a hospital bed, or at least a chance to be diagnosed and treated, while the exhausted doctors cried out, "There is nothing we can do." What's even more frightening is that at that time, they were not facing intestinal infectious diseases, but respiratory diseases. The virus is spread by droplets, and the only protection they have when facing patients on the front line is a thin medical mask. That time, before support arrived, they filled it in with flesh and blood. One batch after another, one after another. "Teacher, I have seen such a big epidemic. I know what to do. Teacher, you believe me. He's seen it, he's experienced it, he's fought it." That time nearly 20 years ago, when he was still a student, he was protected by his teachers and blocked in the school gate. During the earthquake, he had just become a resident doctor and was not eligible to be transferred. He could only stand his ground and grit his teeth after the teachers were transferred. Not long ago, he found the protective clothing used by his predecessors. He was dressed in white and holding armor, charging forward. However, without the support of the whole society and the unity of the people to fight against the epidemic, it will only become a hopeless sacrifice every time, without exception. Elder Irwin stood up straight. He has been working on a composting project outside the city for the past few days. He has to choose the location, shape, depth, and composting method of digging pits. Everything must be designed and recorded. He is extremely busy. I have been so busy today. On the first day I brought people back to the city, I was blocked at home by so many patients. Even though his many years of experience made him realize that something was wrong, facing so many patients asking for help, he really couldn't make up his mind to get out. Besides, isn't there a city lord's mansion? Until just now, little Greet ran over and told him the news that the city lord was leaving the city. Elder Irwin looked at the swaying arms in front of him, at the flow of people lining up from the door of the hut to the end of the alley, and at his colleagues, Anthony's pale face, the beads of sweat on Irvine's forehead, Joanna's cheeks faint red marks on the sides. They are all tired. They are all almost exhausted to the limit. He turned to Greet. I'll go with you. You tell me who you want to find and what you want to do, and I'll do it. Elder Irwin climbed up and shouted, and the effect was indeed outstanding. As a level 8 priest, he can basically be regarded as the pinnacle of spellcasters in Heartland City. The Grand Priest of the Temple of the Fountain Goddess is level 7, and the Bald Bishop is also level 7. As for the host of the Mage Tower, Master Gearman, he is only a pitiful level 5. Almost an hour later, the Bishop of the Temple of the God of War, the Captain of the City Guard, Baron Vaughn, Sir Levi, the only remaining fruit in the city who had not escaped, and several wealthy businessmen gathered at the City Guard barracks. The food merchants, dye house owners, building guild leaders, jewelers, and the like whom Greet named were also sitting blankly on the long table below, shivering. Where is the spring water temple? Gretel waited and waited, but before anyone came from the spring water goddess temple, she asked quietly. Elder Irwin had already inquired around, and now lowered his voice. Hush, they closed the day before yesterday. It is said that everyone from the priests to the guards fell ill. So why did you call us here? Baron Vaughn, who has the highest status here and has a bad temper, was the first to ask. Your Majesty Bishop, can you go to our house and have a look? Several people are not feeling well. Yes. And our family. Our family. The scene was in chaos. Seeing this situation, Elder Irwin took a step forward, raised his oak staff high, and struck the ground hard. With a boom, the whole hall shook, as if a small earthquake had erupted. Because this is a plague. A great plague, the old man roared with great energy, and the whole hall buzzed. Greet resisted and did not cover his ears. If we don't gather everyone's strength, at least a third of the people in the entire city will die. Gretel, tell me. He stepped aside, revealing Gretel. Dozens of pairs of eyes looked over together, and saw a young man standing behind the elder. He was dressed in a strange way. He was holding the iconic oak staff of the Church of Nature in his hand, and he was wearing a robe, with a wand embroidered diagonally on the robe, light. Looking at this robe, he looks like a standard level 1 mage. Who is this person? Those who are well informed naturally know that a mage apprentice has appeared in the city a few days ago and has been accepted as a disciple by the elders of the Natural God sect. There are those who are not well informed and are still whispering to each other and looking for people to inquire. Gretel had already moved 2 steps to the side, stood in front of a wooden board that had been moved earlier, and said loudly. Because according to the current treatment methods, the number of patients will only increase, and the power of healers will never be able to keep up. Teacher, how many people can our sect treat in a day? This depends on the severity of the patient. What if they are all patients who have been in bed for a day or 2 and can't get out of bed? Elder Irwin calculated silently. That requires at least a second-level priest to cure 1 person a day. Counting you and me, there are a total of 14 people in the cult, with different levels, well, 30 to 35 people, not more than 40. Master Bishop, where is the temple of the God of War? That's about right. So, How many patients were there the day before yesterday? How many were there yesterday? My lords, do you know how many patients there are in the city today alone? Gretel's voice suddenly rose. There was a sudden silence in the hall, and only Elder Erwin's voice was calm, as if he was giving a footnote to his disciples. We treated a total of 9 patients the day before yesterday. Yesterday, 28. Today, what I saw alone was more than 100. The day before yesterday, 5. Yesterday, 19. The bald bishop continued in a low voice. Today, more than 100. While they were talking, Greet waved his palms repeatedly and used magic tricks to draw folded lines on the whiteboard. Everyone's eyes were attracted by the broken line. On the first day, 14 people, on the second day, 47 people, on the third day, 200 people. Following this trend, what about the fourth day? What about the fifth day and the sixth day? Gretel was thinking about this too. What is R0 for dysentery? What is the formula for calculating the number of infections? What is the death rate? How many people will get sick tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow, and how many people may die? No matter what, just fill it in. No one here understands anyway. He waved again. On the icon with the black line as the base, the bright red polyline leaps high. On the fourth day, there are 600 people, on the fifth day, there are 1,500 people, and on the sixth day, there are 5,000 people. The line is shockingly steep, far exceeding the green horizontal line representing life at the 100-person mark. We can't treat so many people. If we let it go, no one can save so many people. Gentlemen, we don't want you, your family, your relatives and friends to get sick and die, so we need to take action immediately. Thanks to @Sanji Yukin for the 500 starting coin reward. Thanks to @Screws for the 100 starting coins reward. Please collect, recommend, and review books. Please don't keep the book and read it every day. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 95. Chapter 95. Soon it was time to put it on the shelves again. The last book was released on August 1, 2020, with 200,000 words and a collection of just over 1,200. This book was put on the shelves on June 1, 2021, with a word count of 270,000, and a collection of just over 5,000. All in all, it's a full 4 times difference. When I first started writing this book, my grades were not good. At the end of the first month, my collection was only 707 on April 30th. I was very afraid that it would not be as good as the grade of the previous book. At that time, I once said to the editor-in-chief Penglay, I don't have high requirements. As long as the book is on the shelves for 4 months, the average order can reach 500, or there is hope of reaching 500, this is after the 3-month period of new books being put on the shelves. If you continue to have perfect attendance, standard, I will finish writing this book in a down-to-earth manner, 1 million words to 2 million words, and I will keep writing, and I will never cut it off halfway. Mr. Penglay comforted me very patiently and arranged several recommendations for me. In short, with today's results, it seems that the average subscription of 500 does not need to persist for 4 more months and can be achieved in advance. Thank you to Penglay University for your guidance and help all the time, and thank you for being with us all the time, and for those of you who have recently joined us. Let's talk about the update plan after the launch. A minimum of 2 chapters are guaranteed every day, and they are still issued on time at 12 o'clock and 2000 hours. As for tomorrow, there will be 3 chapters early in the morning, then 1 chapter at 12 o'clock noon, and 1 chapter at 8 p.m. Then, in addition, if the first order can reach 400 tomorrow, 1 more chapter will be updated the day after tomorrow to reach 500, 2 more chapters will be updated to reach 600, 3 more chapters will be updated, and so on. Tips will be added to the update. The current plan is to add an update chapter for every 10,000 rewards accumulated. So far, everyone has tipped more than 400 UN in total, so it will be 4,000 rewards and updates. Starting from the day after tomorrow, I will try my best to add more updates a day. One chapter, until the debt is paid off. From now on, as long as I have the ability, I will increase the reward every 10,000 UN, and I will work hard to pay off my debt. This story is still very long, and the worldview has only opened up a corner. In the future, let us accompany it together. By the way, please make your first order. Please give me a guaranteed monthly pass at the beginning of next month. Please subscribe, collect, and review books. The last chapter before it is released today is still at 8 o'clock. After reading this, please refresh and you will see the new chapter Carrot. Carrot. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 96. At the front of the hall, the bright red lines on the line graph were raised high, which was shocking. On both sides and below the hall, nobles, knights, wealthy businessmen, craftsmen, etc. were speechless. Under the bald bishop, there was a click, and a section of the armrest of the chair was torn off. He stood up suddenly. What to do? You say, we will cooperate with you. This is a great trust and a great responsibility. Even though Gretel has dual identities of priest and mage, the two level 1 professions added together are still far behind the bald bishop. Gretel was not afraid. He stretched out his right hand, counted his fingers one by one and said, "First of all, we need to gather all the patients in one place and separate them according to severity. Send someone to take care of the mild ones, and let the priest treat the severe ones." Before he finished speaking, there was an uproar in the hall. Baron von jumped extremely high. How can this be done? How can my family be put together with those mud-legged people? Do you know how to take care of it? Do you know how to treat it? If someone gets sick, do you know what to do so that others don't get sick? Greet asked 3 questions in succession. With each question, Baron von's arrogance dropped a bit. After 3 questions, His Excellency the Baron blinked, but There is no but, Elder Erwin said coldly. Those who do not obey orders and are unwilling to contribute will have no time to deal with the natural god cult. The temple of the god of war is not available either, the bald bishop added. There are 3 churches in the city, and the spring water temple is closed. The latter 2 are equivalent to monopolizing all healing resources. When the 2 families join forces, the whole city has to obey its orders. Baron von shut up silently, listening to Gretel's words and ordering in an orderly manner. Take the map and household registration information of the whole city, divide them by area, and search for patients from door to door. All patients will be escorted to the same place for treatment. I'll send someone, Captain Nolan agreed immediately. Elder Erwin interjected, just send it to the Church of the Lord of Glory. It's empty there anyway. Thank you for your hard work, Gretel bowed slightly. All the patient's family members are also gathered in one place for observation. Those who do not have the same symptoms within 3 days can be released. In the whole city, especially in the slums, set up stoves and provide boiled water for free. Let's set up 10, 20 ones first, and issue an order to the whole city. No one is allowed to drink raw water, drink water, or cook. They all come to drink boiled water. What about the money? The clerk beside him who was recording the order blurted out. Gretel glanced down. Among the wealthy businessmen, Mr. Hogan, who had given him a pen and paper before, immediately jumped up, and the silver button on his belly trembled. I'll donate 10 gold coins. Thank you for your generosity. Gretel bowed slightly. He turned to the affairs officer and said, record it and count it as a donation to the temple. He looked at the teacher. Elder Irwin nodded slightly, and immediately, 5 or 6 hands were raised. I'll also donate 10 gold coins. I'll donate 5. I'll donate 8. I've paid for all the charcoal used to boil water these days. The affairs officer's records are insufficient. Greet looked down, showed a smile that was in line with everyone's expectations, and continued to order. Concentrate lime all over the city. Put a large amount of quicklime on all water sources. Add 1 bucket of quicklime to 1 bucket of water, stir it evenly and then add 3 buckets of water. With this ratio, all the floors of homes with patients will be sprinkled. Find some healthy women to come to the temple to take care of the sick, boil water and cook food. He issued orders one by one. Around him, a row of administrative officers from the city lord's palace were extremely busy, moving maps, moving household registration information, dividing areas, and cooperating with the city guards to assign manpower according to plots of land. Calculate areas, calculate manpower, and calculate costs. Captain Nolan suddenly turned around. Not enough manpower. Send the temple guards, the bald bishop responded immediately. He stared straight at Baron von until he spread his hands and shrugged helplessly. Okay, I can also send 10 of my guards. Gretel searched as hard as possible, trying not to miss any detail. Even in a foreign world, even when faced with an unknown disease that is just considered bacillary dysentery, the prevention and treatment of infectious diseases should still follow the same 3 principles. Manage sources of infection. Cut off the transmission channels. Protect vulnerable people. Have I done it all? Have I considered every aspect? There are assistants, teachers, and trustworthy companions, but in this vast foreign world, I am the only one who has received formal medical training. Close the city gate and prohibit entry and exit, no. Then send someone to ask the city lord for instructions. Recall all the priests who are outside and gather them in the temple of the Lord of Glory. Collect all the corpses and do not bury them privately, let alone throw them into the water. The patient's feces must be handled uniformly. Before dumping, stir it with quicklime. Count the number of patients. Greet racked his brains one by one. Until he could no longer think of any loopholes, he set off with Elder Irwin and others to the Cathedral of the Lord of Radiance to carry out medical work. This cathedral is the most magnificent building in Heartland City. It is located on the right side of the central square, facing the city lord's palace in the distance. Viewed from top to bottom, it shows a standard cross shape, short horizontally and long vertically. A steeple stands high at the intersection, and its height is even higher than the city lord's palace. Surrounding the church was a large military camp surrounded by walls. 3 years ago, the Holy Knights of the Lord of Glory was one of the most powerful and fierce armed organizations in Heartland City. Under the prestige, even though the church had been driven out of Heartland City for 3 years, the empty church still stood there majestically, and no one dared to touch it. If it weren't for the fact that he had taken up the right to cure the plague, Elder Irwin would not have wanted to touch their church. But now, if it moves, it will move. Gretel followed the elders into the Glory Cathedral, and a noise immediately hit him. The hall became a mess with shouting and shouting. The wife hugged her husband, and the mother hugged her son, crying as if she was about to say goodbye. Damon! Damon! Don't take him away, please, don't take him to that place. Lord priest, please help. Your Majesty the God of War, please have mercy on your followers. Run, they're going to lock us up to die. Gretel stayed where he was. Just for a moment, a small soft thing bumped into him and hugged his leg. A woman's voice not far away screamed, Eva. Gretel lowered his head. It was little Eva, the little girl he gave him cakes to eat and picked flowers to thank him, the girl who was almost hit by a carriage but was saved by his teacher. At this moment, the girl's thin hands were holding his robe, and her tone was timid. "Brother, can you please help Mom and don't lock her up? I can take care of her, I don't want her to wait for death." Waiting to die, yes, gathering seriously ill patients together is indeed like letting them wait to die, and this is a commonly used method of disposal in this world. That does not work. It will be messy. Before having time to discuss with the teacher, Greet jumped onto a table with the girl in his arms and shouted loudly. "You are not locked up and waiting to die. You will have food, someone to take care of you, and you will have treatment. You will be fine." He didn't even notice the unusual spell fluctuations, nor did he notice that his voice was particularly loud, rumbling across the hall. The noise fell silent, and someone shouted, "How can we trust you?" "I am Gretel Nordmark," Gretel shouted back. "I was the one who directed the rescue of people during the stampede on Midsummer Night. No one gave up and no one died. It was also my idea to gather the patients together for treatment this time. I will be with you until the last person is cured and will not give up on you. No one will be given up. During the PK period, please pursue reading, please don't keep books, please read them every day. Please collect, recommend, book reviews, please vote for me. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right?" Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 97. The whole hall looked at him. Gretel looked back firmly, not giving up anyone and saving everyone was his original plan. Just like in the previous life, until the patients are cleared and everyone is recovered and discharged, the shelter, doctors and support teams will not be evacuated. He looked down at the patients, still holding the little Eva and stroking her gently, not caring about soiling his gown. Such a gentle attitude gradually calmed down the panicked patients. Elder Irwin smiled, followed his apprentice and stood on the table, shouting loudly, "Citizens! Believers of the God of Nature! I am Irwin, the Elder of the Order. It is a joint decision between me and the Bishop of the God of War Temple to gather the sick people here. The servants of the God of Nature and the priests of the God of War will take care of you here. Please follow the instructions and follow the pastor. I will not leave here until the last patient is cured." Elder Irwin's prestige and credibility are naturally much higher than Gretel's. He personally came forward, and after repeated attempts at comfort, the patients finally regained their composure. The flow of people started moving again. Greet put down the little Eva, wiped his sweat, and went to wash hands and change clothes in the side hall. As soon as I put on a clean robe, the small door opened with a creak. A man hurriedly ran in and grabbed Gretel. "Why are you still here?" "It's Master Elliot, why is he so anxious?" Gretel turned around and saw a knight slowly following Elliot. When he saw Gretel, he nodded slightly. "Mage Nordmark. Mage Whitman will leave the day after tomorrow morning and return to the Magic Council. The mage asked me to send a message, please be prepared and return with him then." "The morning after tomorrow?" Greet looked around subconsciously. Elder Irwin, Anthony, Alvin, Joanna, and other priests from the nature religion who hurriedly arrived, as well as several priests from the Temple of the God of War, stopped almost at the same time. Elder Irwin just paused in his hand and continued to change without looking at him. Anthony, Alvin, and Little John, who had just entered the door, all looked directly at him. Little John blurted out and asked, "Gretel, are you leaving?" "Yeah, there are so many patients here," Anthony whispered. Joanna gave him a hand. "Just go. Little Gretel is going to the Magic Council." "What a good thing. Little Gretel, you just go the day after tomorrow. We are here, we can do it. Go." "Going to the Magic Council? In the face of a great plague, do you abandon the sick and walk away?" "I do like magic, more interested in it than healing, but I can't leave the patient in my hands." Greet struggled hard. He shook off Elliot's hand and stared at the knight in front of him, his eyes full of expectation. Can Master Whitman leave later, for example, half a month later? Gretel. That's the Magic Council. Elliot stamped his feet. The knight shook his head at the same time. The time limit given by the council is very tight. Master Whitman will visit Master Lin and today and tomorrow, and he has to leave the day after tomorrow. Master Nordmark, please prepare. See you at the Master Tower the morning of tomorrow. Is there no room for accommodation? Greet still wanted to struggle. Elliot had grasped his hand again. Gretel. I've asked about it. This Magic Council plan has been prepared for more than half a year, and the candidates have already been decided. You were the last to recommend it, and classes will start in half a month. Rush back now, and the time has already passed. It's so tight. Is this so? Gretel looked around sadly. Through the door of the side hall, he saw patients groaning in pain, priests running around, and healthy women running back and forth carrying buckets and dishes. Beside him, Elliot pulled his arm hard and said in a quick voice. Greet. This opportunity is rare. A lot of resources will be gathered, and many masters will give lectures. If you are lucky, you can become a disciple of an archmage or even a legendary mage. Don't miss it. Go quickly, don't delay. Gretel looked away. He opened his mouth to speak, but Elder Irwin's palm had already touched his shoulder. Little Greet, go ahead. You've done a lot, we can do the things here. Can it be done? Maybe. But for the sake of my own development, I abandon patience in the face of catastrophic disasters. If I do that, I will no longer be me. Greet gently shook off the teacher's hand. He broke away from Master Elliot again, took a step back, and looked solemn. Elliot, I'm sorry. I'm very grateful to the Magic Council for taking this seriously, and I'm very grateful to Master Lawrence for getting this opportunity for me, but, before being a mage, I am first and foremost a healer. I can't leave my patients alone, I'm sorry, but I won't go anywhere until the plague is gone and all the patients are cured. He bowed deeply. To Master Elliot, to the knight who came specially to deliver the message, to the old magician and the Magic Council who gave him a chance. Then, he straightened up and strode out. Don't mix tableware. Everyone uses his or her own bowl. After taking it back, it must be boiled in boiling water before being distributed. Everyone must wash their hands before eating. Washed fruits cannot be eaten without peeling them. Boil water. Every mild patient must drink water. Add salt and sugar to the water. How much to add? Make a separate room to prepare sugar and salt water. I'll come and see right away. Get more curtains to separate the beds. After the patient has diarrhea, he must be washed and dried. Otherwise, he will get sores. Priests followed in droves. Master Elliot stood there blankly for a long time, stamping his feet angrily. Why are you so stupid? Gretel shouted as he walked. Not many people came from the god of nature religion. In addition to priests, the god of war temple also sent temple guards and capable deacons. He just gave orders, and naturally people ran to do them. Gretel looked over it once, and seeing that the matter at hand was generally in order, he went to see the patient again. Seriously ill patients have been separated and placed in a separate side hall. Elder Irwin stood at the head of a little boy's bed, his palms stretched flat above the child, and white light flickered, falling bit by bit on the boy's body. Greet waited beside him for a moment. After the treatment was completed, he quietly gave the old man a hand. Teacher, I have some ideas for the treatment of this plague. The focus of the treatment can be on the left lower abdomen. You see, many patients suffer from severe pain in the left lower abdomen. Elder Irwin thought for a moment, nodded, and immediately passed on the message loudly. The servants of the god of nature all responded, but from the priest of the god of war, There was a cold snort that was neither high nor low. Oh ha ha! Are the students commanding the teacher? A level 1 priest is commanding an 8th level priest? Little guy, how much healing skills have you learned? Do you understand this disease? Thanks to @Sanji Yukin for the 500 starting coin reward. Thanks to @Mr. Reliable for the 100 starting coins. I'm going crazy looking for information. Continue to ask for collections, recommendations, and book reviews. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 98. Questioned. Greet was not nervous at all. Starting from the day of the internship, each subject rotated, and during the weekly ward rounds, who was not asked by the chief director that his legs were weak. After I started working, I was scolded by the teacher, the director, and the head nurse. When I was unlucky, I was questioned by the directors and deans of each department during the whole hospital consultation. It was like a torrent of fire. At this moment, I proposed a treatment plan and was questioned by a stranger. Is this a big deal? The only strange thing is that there is such a person among the Ares priests. Weird, new here? I should know all the priests from the Ares temple, right? Gretel turned and looked over. The person who spoke simply stood up, wearing a robe that was fluttering, but no tendons could be seen when it was wrapped around him. Oh, he is indeed new, and his style of painting is indeed different. Seeing Gretel looking over, he laughed coldly and raised his voice. Little guy, at your age, how long have you learned healing techniques? Have you ever treated this disease? Forget about sending your teacher. Why don't you send someone to the temple of the god of war? God of war, we can. Achan. The bald bishop roared. The sound was rumbling, like thunder rolling over the side hall. He rushed over in a few steps, spread his fingers like 5 carrots, and grabbed Achan. Gretel quickly stopped him. Etc. He stretched out his hand to stop it. The bald bishop stopped in response, still angry, and glared at Achan fiercely. Gretel smiled. What you said makes sense. I am young and have little knowledge. I have never personally treated this kind of plague. But it is not difficult to know where to treat dash. He turned to Elder Irwin with a serious expression and bowed slightly. Teacher, can you help me get a corpse? Those who died in this plague can be disemboweled and cut into pieces at will dash. Do you have another idea? Elder Irwin raised his eyebrows. In front of outsiders, he couldn't directly ask, what kind of divine inspiration is it from you again? However, others didn't understand, but Greet knew it at a glance. He was confident and nodded with a smile. Certainly. The body was soon hauled in. The city guards rummaged around and easily found the body of a homeless man. No children, no relatives, no family, no matter how you tear it into pieces, no one will come to find a place to do it. A third wing of the church was vacated. The god of war priests moved the tables and chairs very skillfully, with a circle of stools inside and a circle of tables outside, tightly surrounding the anatomy table. Gretel put on a special leather apron and entered the scene slowly. Little John stood at the feet of the deceased, picked up the scalpel like last time, and handed it to him. Gretel didn't answer. He held his hands flat in front of his chest, palms facing outward, and his hands were about a punch away from his chest. Look around and raise your voice. We will never understand all diseases. We can treat what we already know based on experience, what we have never seen before. The fastest way to understand it is to dissect a corpse, to see where the corpse has changed and which organs have been damaged. That's where we need to prioritize treatment. Having said this, Greet glanced at Achan. Achan's face turned dark as expected, and he opened his mouth to speak. Gretel didn't give him a chance, raised his head and spoke louder. So we want to thank these people who died. It is they who use their bodies to tell us the mysteries inside the human body. It is they who point out the direction for us to move forward in medical science. They lie there, silent, but they are good teachers worthy of our respect. Just like the disaster not long ago. It was the remains of the first, second, and many subsequent patients that pointed out the key points of follow-up treatment for doctors who were challenging this disease for the first time. Gretel took a step back. He straightened his clothes and bowed deeply. One bow, another bow, 3 bows. The movements are pious and the expression is solemn. The whole hall was silent. Dozens of priests, led by Elder Irwin from the Natural Gods Church and headed by the bald bishop from the God of War Temple, silently watched Gretel bow repeatedly to the body of a homeless man as a priest and mage. After a moment, Elder Irwin breathed a sigh of relief. You should remember this too. There was a gentle response from all around, like a gentle breeze blowing over the water. Gretel straightened up, then took the scalpel from Little John's hand and cut it open. There are many steps in dissecting a corpse. Time is tight, so let's look at the internal organs first. In this plague, the main symptom of the patient is diarrhea, so let's look at the gastrointestinal tract first. Illumination has a faint brilliance. In Greet's hands, scalpels, dissecting scissors, and tissue tweezers were flying up and down in an orderly manner. The entire side hall was silent as they watched Gretel lift up an organ and show it to the outside. There are no obvious abnormalities in the stomach. The small intestine has normal shape, no congestion, no inflammation. Hey, how do you know? Someone in the crowd shouted a question. Gretel kept his hands on and didn't look back. You've seen enough and you know it. When we're done here, you can find a corpse that died normally. I'll dissect it for you and tell you what's different. Well. The person who questioned remained silent. There was a slight commotion among the surrounding priests, and some whispered to each other. So how many dissections did he perform? Only 16 years old. It is said that he is still a mage, a necromancer, right? Gretel pretended not to hear. He continued to dissect section by section, and section by section. There is no abnormality in the cecum. There is no abnormality in the ascending colon. The descending colon appears normal. Sigmoid colon, well, everyone, look carefully. There is obvious bleeding and pus here in the sigmoid colon, which is consistent with the shape of the patient's stool. Liver, gallbladder, spleen, kidneys. So, the main damage caused by this disease is the sigmoid colon. After displaying the organs one by one and putting them back one by one, Gretel raised his hands flat in front of his chest and raised his voice to make a conclusion. Everyone has seen that the location of the sigmoid colon is in the left lower abdomen of the human body. Therefore, during treatment, the treatment should be concentrated on this area to get the greatest effect. Are there any questions? All was quiet. Where the disease comes from and how to release the healing technique, each family has always had its own opinion. However, the body was spread out on the table, and the swollen and bleeding intestines were displayed in front of everyone. Such evidence was irrefutable. Even if there is no normal dead body for comparison, the appearance of the affected part and the normal intestine above is different, and anyone with eyes can see it. Even Pastor Aiken, who was the first to speak, avoided everyone's gaze and lowered his head in silence. Ahem, since there is no problem, let's do as Gretel said, Elder Irwin said to ease the atmosphere. He walked a few steps closer with a smile and looked at the corpse lying on the autopsy table with all its internal organs cut open. Little Greet, I'm getting old, and I tend to forget some things. Which section of intestine is where, and where the healing spell should be thrown? Can you draw a picture so that everyone can see it? No problem at all. Greet bowed and saluted. Soon, a large shelf was erected at the door leading from the mild area to the severe area. Simple and easy to understand anatomy diagrams are posted on them for anyone to see. There is a constant flow in front of the map. Greet clearly saw that several priests came over to take a look after treating one person, and then came over to take a look after treating 2 people. Soon, there were calls of surprise one after another. The effect of the treatment is much better. Yes, I am here too. At least 30% saved. 40% is okay. Don't just throw it in there, think about what you just saw, the appearance of the intestines. Little Gretel, you are great. Gretel smiled. It turns out that the improved effect of the treatment is not his hallucination. It turns out that being familiar with the anatomy of the human body does help with treatment. In such a big epidemic, if treatment can save 1 point, save 1 point. Thanks to @Zixakayu for the 500 starting coins. Thanks to @GGNNZZ for the 100 starting coins. Please collect, recommend, and review books. Please keep reading during the PK period, read it every day. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 99. Gretel was in a good mood. Although I did not personally participate in the treatment, through my guidance, the overall treatment efficiency increased by more than 30%. I'm so awesome. He pumped his fist vigorously. Seeing that the pastors were performing their duties in an orderly manner, Greet tiptoed behind Elder Irwin and quietly pulled him. Teacher, I'm out. What are you going to do? I'm going to find the real source of this plague. Gretel never thought about staying in the Glory Cathedral, or rather, staying at the centralized medical point. He is only a first-level priest. There are only a handful of available treatments, and all efforts to treat seriously ill patients can be completely consumed within half an hour. This amount of treatment is a drop in the bucket in front of hundreds of patients. However, in the face of this epidemic, he has his own unique value. There are some things that no one can do except him, and no one would even think of doing them. He strode into the city guard barracks. In the barracks hall, Baron von, Sir Reeves, and several wealthy businessmen who had donated money all left. The food merchants were busy supplying food to the glorious cathedral, and the leaders of the construction guilds took people to build stoves. Among the people Greet had named, only 2 were still sitting there, looking at each other and trembling. Longwait Gretel hurried in. The 2 of them had been left alone until now. After asking around in every possible way, they finally found out that it was this young man who called them here. Seeing him now was like meeting a savior. The dye merchants rushed to shout. I'll donate 5 gold coins. I will also donate 5, no, 6, the jeweler was not to be outdone. Mr. Master, if you have any good gems, I will help you set them into jewelry for free. No need for manual labor. You don't need to donate. Greet waved his hand quickly. He couldn't tell who was who at first, but the jeweler's words saved him the trouble of asking. Gretel first turned to the dye merchant. Excuse me, please give me an ounce of each of the dyes you have. No, half an ounce is enough. Pay the market price, and I will ask the clerk to calculate the money for you. No, no, no. Just a little bit of dye, I will donate it directly. You have to pay. I'm very pressed for time, so you can do it as soon as possible. Greet didn't want to say more to him, so he interrupted directly. Then he turned to the jeweler. I have something very important to ask you to do. First of all, can you grind glass? Can you do a magnifying glass? Yes, but it will take a long time. Is there a magnifying glass readily available? Have. Great. Then you see, can you make something like this? The 2 people were chirping. Gretel was writing and drawing, while the jeweler sat beside him, asking questions and discussing with him completely forgetfully. The dye merchant tried several times but failed to get in the conversation, so he shrugged and walked away. It doesn't look difficult. I'll try to make it. Give me 5 days and I can probably make it. Brass pipes and knobs, these all take time, there's no rush. Not 5 days, Greet interrupted categorically, I can only give you 1 day. At this time tomorrow, you must get the things no matter what. The jeweler looked troubled. Gretel stood up and put his hands on the edge of the table, bent down to look at him, trying to look as menacing as possible. I'll give you the money. If you need people, I'll find them. You can ask for anything you want. You have to give me something I can use by this time tomorrow at the latest. This is very important. Whether we can save the plague in the city depends on it. The jeweler was startled and nodded repeatedly. Greet walked back and forth a few steps and called a clerk. Give him whatever he wants and settle the accounts later. Also, buy me 1,000 more plates and 1,000 shallow plates that can cover the plates. By the way, find a glass maker to cut 2,000 pieces of transparent glass. If there is no color, a half-inch square piece is enough. 1,000 pieces are of normal thickness, and the other 1,000 pieces are as thin as possible. 2,000? That many? The steward was startled. Is this going to open a store? You can't just ask for dishes and plates when opening a shop. At least it is paired with some bowls, spoons, knives and forks, and glass pieces. What is this for? If you are looking for colorful ones, I will pretend that you have stained glass windows. He looked strange. Gretel smiled bitterly, I'm just afraid it's not enough. Gretel wants this, wants that, asking for all kinds of things that others can't figure out. At the same moment, the closed temple of the spring goddess was already filled with excitement. The high priest led a group of clergymen and formed a formation in front of the secret room where the dead were. They jingled the sacred chimes, rang the sacred bells, and prayed loudly. Great goddess of springs, please have mercy on your people. Great spring goddess, please give me clean spring water to soothe the thirst of your people. Great goddess of springs, please cleanse this land. The goddess of spring water's ministry is directly related to the spring water, and her priests are indeed good at cleaning water sources. Amidst the prayers, gurgling spring water emerged from the mouth of the bottle and the spout of the pot, and poured on the ground. The black air on the ground immediately became lighter. However, as soon as the prayer ended, 2 low-level priests immediately said ouch. I feel uncomfortable in my stomach, I'll go away for a moment. The high priest wanted to vomit blood. From the death of the Roman knight to now, I don't know how many evil-dispelling rituals have been performed, and the black air in the secret room has become lighter and weaker. However, more and more people are falling ill. At first, it was servants without extraordinary strength and not in good health, then guards and apprentices, and now, even low-level priests have begun to fall ill. What a joke! However, the goddess of spring water is the god of cleanliness and crystal clear water. It was disrespectful to the goddess to show filth during prayer, so he could only wave his hands and tell those 2 guys to get out of here. The large group of people packed up their things and headed out. Halfway through, a young waiter rushed in carrying a robe and approached the high priest. Sir, those poor devils at the door have been dragged away. Towed away. Just tow it away. The goddess of spring water is the ancestral god of the kingdom, and more than half of the nobles in the kingdom believe in the goddess of spring water. Even if the temple is closed, they are still eligible for treatment. Of course, there will be no shortage of donations to the temple, and there will also be no shortage of sons and daughters sent to the temple to be trained as priests and knights. As for the poor ghosts who can only pray and shout in the square at the door, and scoop water from the fountain at the door to drink. Usually it's just an embellishment, if there are too many of them, there won't be too many of them. At critical moments, just drag them away. By the way, I heard someone beating a gong on the street and shouting, not to drink the water from the fountain. It was said that this plague was caused by drinking raw water, and everyone was told to drink boiled water from the stove. What? The high priest was angry. The fountain at the entrance of the temple represents the blessing of the spring goddess. The water in the fountain is drawn from the underground of the temple. The priests pray for the blessed water. If citizens are not allowed to drink water from the fountain, doesn't that mean there is something wrong with the blessing of the spring goddess? This is digging the foundation of the temple. He's slapping the goddess in the face. What nonsense is this? Take a group of people out, blow them away, and then find out who is talking nonsense. Thanks, it's time to stop playing. I'm getting tired of it. I gave you 100 starting coins as a reward. I hope that the number of new collections added today will exceed 100, Amidba. Please collect, recommend, and review books. Please don't keep it, come and see it every day. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 100. The Temple of the Fountain Goddess is deeply rooted in Heartland City. Not long after the high priest released the people, news from the outside world came back one by one. It was the city guards who took away the patient. The city guards sent people to patrol the streets from house to house. If there were any patients, they were brought to the Glory Cathedral. The priests of the God of Nature Order and the Temple of the God of War have all gathered in the Church of Glory. It is said that the decision was made jointly by the Order of the God of Nature, the Temple of the God of War and the city guards. We saw Baron von's servant. The high priest frowned more and more as he listened. The Order of the God of Nature, the Temple of the God of War, and the city guards, these three together always reminded him of a somewhat annoying name. But none of this matters. And most importantly, who is that guy talking nonsense? Great priest, we have heard about dash. Another attendant ran in panting. These ideas were all told by a man named Gretel, the one who came to the temple last time, said it. Gretel Nordmark. The high priest raised his eyebrows. It's that little guy again. It was he who came to slap me in the face. During the Midsummer Festival, he was also the one who said to his face that he wanted to clean up the city's water sources. When he was treating the grandson of Master Lawrence, he was still the one who pointed fingers and taught two high-level priests as students. The old guy Erwin spoiled his student, and the bald bishop went crazy. Day by day, he spoiled the kid to lawlessness. Now, I even dare to question the gift of the spring water goddess. He slammed the table angrily. Here comes someone. Prepare the ceremony and come with me. Although the idea came from the little guy, the ones who nodded behind him were definitely those two treacherous guys. What a bunch of bastards. Is it because you want to shake the faith of the spring water goddess to take advantage of the opportunity to expand your power? Snort. After driving away the Lord of Glory Church, it's not like he didn't notice the little moves made by those two families. The high priest was furious and led a group of people to the Glory Cathedral. Elder Alvin and the bald bishop naturally came out to greet them. When everyone met, the high priest calmed down his anger and chatted with them casually before entering together. It wasn't until he sat down in the inner room that he pointed at the two leaders of the religious sect and laughed. Hey, you two, what you're doing is unreasonable. Treating a disease is all about treating the disease. Why aren't people even allowed to drink the water in the fountain? When Gretel issued this order, it was packaged and passed down together with the words build stoves to boil water and supply boiled water throughout the city and no raw water is allowed to be drunk. It didn't matter when I thought about it at the time, but now, the great priest comes to ask questions. You say the water in the river is dirty, the water in the ditch you say is dirty. Could it be that the fountain at the entrance of the temple, a water source blessed by the spring goddess, can still be dirty? Can drinking cause problems? The bald bishop moved in his seat and was about to answer. Elder Erwin stretched out his hand to stop him, looked directly into the eyes of the great priest, and said calmly, "Pot water can easily spread diseases. Mr. Horner, we are not targeting you, we are just thinking about the lives of the people in the city. But that's the goddess's holy spring, the high priest frowned. Elder Irwin did not give in. Of course the holy spring is a holy spring. However, there are many people scooping out water, and the equipment used cannot be guaranteed to be clean. During the plague, it is better not to fetch water for the time being. The goddess's holy spring naturally has the ability to clean water. Irwin, you are too spoiled to that little guy. You just copy what he says. You don't know if you will get the plague if you drink raw water. Woolen cloth. Greet stood quietly next to the teacher, looking at his eyes, his mouth, his nose, trying to think of the next experimental plan. Hearing what the great priest said, he suddenly raised his eyes and looked straight at the other party. Elder Irwin had been paying attention to him with his peripheral vision. When he saw that he wanted to speak, he raised his hand and waved forward vigorously. Unboiled water can easily spread the plague. Gretel, tell me. Great priest, Lord Bishop, teacher Gretel took a step forward, bowed his head slightly, and saluted the 3 heads of religious orders present. When he raised his head, he immediately changed from being humble and gentle to being persistent and firm. Whether drinking raw water will spread the plague, whether drinking water from the fountain will spread the plague, I have no say. All the adults are here, we can do an experiment. Find some healthy rabbits and feed them with raw water from rivers, canals, fountains, and boiled and cooled water. After feeding, see which rabbit has diarrhea and which rabbit does not. Gretel was confident. Anyway, he needed experimental animals for his next experiment, so when the great priest came to look for trouble, he simply asked him to pay for them in one go. In order to silence the great priest, he simply enriched the experimental design. For the sake of the accuracy of the experiment, it is recommended that the high priest send someone to buy rabbits. After buying them, they should be treated with magic first, and then randomly selected. When collecting water, several families can also supervise each other together to avoid exchanging water samples. Rabbits can get dysentery anyway. Snort. That's enough, High Priest Horner angrily waved his sleeves. The other party has laid out everything. If you walk away at this time, you will look unreasonable. If you wait here to watch people feeding rabbits, you will look stupid. Greet lowered his head in response, made a humble appearance, and whispered. Of course, if you are in a hurry, we can also buy rabbits. What answered him was a smashed money bag. The rabbit was quickly bought. Greet marked the water samples calmly, hung labels on the rabbit cages according to the water samples, and fed the rabbits with water. He also went out of his way to do things in a down-to-earth manner. The dishes used for feeding water were freshly taken out of the steamer, one for each rabbit, and they were never mixed. Then, it's a long wait. Gretel quietly left after feeding the rabbit. Elder Irwin and the bald bishop both used up today's healing skills. They were both idle, one sitting on the left side of the rabbit and the other on the right side of the rabbit, each praying. High Priest Horner sat and waited boredly, waiting until the red sun set and night fell, and then. The rabbit has diarrhea. Except for the few rabbits who drank the cold water, the rest, including those who drank the fountain water, began to have diarrhea one after another. Bald Bishop. Elder Irwin. Instead of bickering or blaming each other, it's really good to get a few rabbits to come out and slap them in the face. High Priest Horner. In front of everyone, his old face looked like it had been covered in rabbit shit. One last flick of sleeves. The holy spring must be polluted. I will organize prayers when I go back and purify the water source, but it is absolutely impossible to prohibit people from taking water from the fountain. I'm afraid it really has to be banned. Greet strode in with a serious look on his face. He bowed slightly to Elder Irwin. Teacher, many of the earlier batch of patients had taken water from the temple's fountain. You. High Priest Horner was shocked and angry. Gretel looked at him seriously, without giving in. I have proof. Thanks to @book friends 20210301102955588 and @sanjukan for the 100 starting coins. Leave a message. Leave a message. Leave a message. Every time I post a new chapter, there is no message, so lonely 555. Please collect, recommend, book reviews, please vote for me.